Cast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Good morning, everybody, and welcome to the March webinar for Kevin Davis Insurance. I'm your host, Sherry Branson. Today's webinar will answer your questions on why claims are denied. I'm now joined by Kevin Davis, the president of Kevin Davis Insurance, and Kevin joins me now from Los Angeles. Hey, Kevin.
Hey, Sherry, how you doing?
Doing well, thank you. Doing well.
Oh, that's good. That's good. Yeah, I heard you had some problems this morning with weather.
Yes, we had some big thunderstorms and I lost power, so I thought I may be doing the webinar from Starbucks, Kevin.
Not a bad place to do a webinar from, that's for sure.
Not bad at all. Plenty of coffee, plenty of good music. So
Uh,
if you lose me in the middle of the webinar, you'll know where I'll be. I'll be running over to Starbucks.
okay, that makes sense to me. Okay, that'll work.
Yes. And Kevin, we have a great webinar today. We have a really interesting topic.
Yeah, it's funny. The number one call I get all the time is that why was my claim denied? And it's interesting because I get these, claim denial letters from all of our competitors, and they want me to interpret it, they want me to look at it. And so I decided it was now to kind of talk about generally why claims are denied. It's not going to be specific. It's going to be a kind of a general conversation about, 5 different ways that we've found out that when you get those denial letters.
Absolutely. Great. We're going to talk about 5 main reasons why denials happen typically under a D&O policy. And I did want to mention that if anybody would like a copy of the slides today, please send me an email to sbranson@kdins.com. And I also record all of our webinars and I put it on our website at kdisonline.com, so you can listen to today's recording and then all of our past webinars as well on our website. So Kevin, can you discuss the main 5 reasons that claims are denied?
Sure. When we talk about the 5 reasons, we talk about number 1, it's because they're excluded under the D&O policy. Number 2, that we have to realize that D&O is a claims made and reported policy. And number 3, that there's certain things that are prior acts or prior knowledge things that are excluded. Then we're talking about the application, how the application has to be completed properly. And then the 5th reason, and probably the reason I see more, is that the insurer's not purchasing the right coverages because they're not buying the right D&O policy.
Okay. Those are the 5 main reasons. And now, Kevin, why everybody who's joining us today is in the community association industry, they're working it in some way, shape, or form. Why is this a concern to community associations?
Yeah, okay. We talk about community associations, Sherry. They're unlike any other corporation out there. If you look at your standard for-profit companies or your standard not-for-profit companies, and you look at a community association is made up of volunteer homeowner members, people who actually live there. They have no knowledge, no experience about how to manage this multi-million-dollar corporation that they have access to, that they're responsible for.
Absolutely. The job is much more complex than they expect, right, Kevin?
Yeah, you're talking about things like maintaining and operating this massive association. You're talking about enforcing rules. You're talking about preparing budget. As a result, you have people who get upset when they don't like decisions the board make. And you're talking about unit owners. You're talking about other board members. You're talking about renters. You're talking about the management company people. You're talking about contractors who come onto the premises. All these people are influenced by decisions that board people make.
Absolutely. And then if they don't like what the decisions that they make, they might file a claim, right, Kevin?
Exactly. And we're talking about all different kind of claims you see out there that's really, really as a result of decisions these boards make.
We're seeing things like failure to fund the reserves or to enforce the rules, breach of contract, discrimination, noise issues, breach of fiduciary duty. I mean, really, the claims are all over the place.
Yeah, and there's a difference between community associations and other, is that when you talk about community association, these things are emotionally driven, emotionally based, not the result of financial loss like other insurance-related claims. So we talk about things like noise or a breach of contract or the board hasn't enforced the rules properly. They're talking about things where a judge has to determine who's right and who's wrong. They're not after $1 million or $100,000 because they suffered some damages.
Absolutely. That's why it's really important to understand how to report a claim, Kevin.
Yeah, and it's important to understand what a claim is and what happens when you're talking about these kind of situations, these kind of claims.
Absolutely. And now, Kevin, can you give everybody an example of a typical actual claim?
Sure. Okay. when we talk about a claim, okay, here's one that I found in Insurance Journal. It's not this is a claim that I looked at. In fact, I was going to use it and save it for one of our umbrella programs. But what happened was a jury awarded $20 million against Lamplight Village, a Centennial Springs Homeowner Association, a $20 million lawsuit.
Okay, that's a large claim, Kevin.
Yeah, exactly. And what they said was that the Condominium Association Board violated its own CCNRs, Nevada law, the Manufacturer's Warranty and Consumer Product Safety Commission standards by failing to have a maintenance inspection plan on a swing set that was in the common area.
Okay, so you're saying that they violated their own CCNRs, which are the bylaws of their association, and they didn't have a maintenance and inspection plan on the swing set, so they're in the common area.
Exactly. So now what happened was, according to the lawsuit, a 15-year-old sat down on the swing and texted a message. The lawsuit said that a swing 42-pound metal crossbar broke and landed on his head and crushed the left side of his skull.
Oh, wow. Okay, so that's a serious injury, very serious injury.
Yeah. Now, this is the worst part about it, is that it costs $150 a month to have a certified playground safety inspector come in and take a look at the swing set, and they didn't do it.
Wow. So they
And one more thing, though, to make matters worse, is that the swing set already failed 3 previous times.
Oh, that's incredible. So this could have easily been avoided.
Yeah, it could have been avoided, but again, that's why you have insurance, and this is what we're talking about when we talk about, a kind of a typical claim.
Mm-hmm. So the question is, Kevin, why would this be denied, and under what conditions should coverage be provided?
Okay, so when we talk about directors and officer liability, the first thing we have to do is examine the insurance agreement. Take a look at the insurance agreement and look and see where it says. We always start there, okay?
Mm-hmm.
And basically look at the insurance agreement. It says the company shall pay all loss the insured becomes legally obligated to pay as a result of a claim against the insured for a wrongful act.
Mm-hmm.
Okay? All right, so we're talking about 3 things there. We're talking about the insured, we're talking about a claim, and we're talking about a wrongful act. Okay?
Mm-hmm.
So in order for it to be a claim, first of all, you got to see, are you insured under the policy? And what we're talking about are board members, past board members, employees, committee members, or volunteers, and a community association manager. They're all insured under the policy.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
So next we look at, is it a wrongful act? Okay, wrongful act is any act the insured can be held liable for.
Okay. So basically, in this situation, we're talking about things like the failure to have a maintenance and inspection plan for that swing set in the common area, right, Kevin?
Exactly. That could be a wrongful act. Now, finally, it must be a claim as outlined in the definition. Now, a claim under the D&O means a written demand for monetary and non-monetary relief, civil proceedings commenced by service of a suit, a criminal proceeding, and a formal administrative or regulatory proceeding against the insured. That is a claim. So now, let's look at review. Now, are they insured? Yes. The lawsuit was against the board of Lamplight Village. So, got the insurance.
Yes, they meet that.
The second thing, is it a wrongful act? And the question is, then you said before, they failed to have a maintenance inspection plan on the swing set. Wrongful act. And then, was it a claim? Yes, because the insurer is legally obligated to pay $20 million for a claim based on this written demand for monetary damages. So if you look at the insurance agreement by itself, okay, you can submit a claim to the D&O carrier and your liability carrier send it. Because it does, you look at that one little thing and you go, okay, interesting, right?
Mm-hmm. Sure, it looks like it would fit.
Okay, and this is the problem we talk about for D&O. Because just because it meets those 3 things doesn't necessarily make it a claim. And that's what we're going to talk about today. Now, one thing you have to know is that if you believe it's a claim, submit the claim. Today, we're talking about when that denial letter comes in later, why it's denied. So we're not saying don't submit claims, because one of the things that we're concerned about is making sure that you submit the claims you believe there's a claim, because there's other things that come into play if you don't do that. So today we're talking about when that denial letter comes in, why it's denied based on the certain things we're going to talk about in a few minutes.
Mm-hmm. We're helping people to clarify that distinction.
Exactly. That's what our goal is today.
Absolutely. Great. And I did want to mention, everybody, that if you have a question about what we're going over today, there is a question box on the screen. You can type in your questions into the question box, or you can send me an email to sbranson@kdins.com. And if we have time at the end of the webinar, we'll answer your questions. If not, we'll get in touch with you after the webinar. Great. And now, Kevin, what about the exclusions? I know that that's a big aspect of this, right?
That is the most important part, because when you talk about the wrongful act, it's any act. You talk about claim, it is broad. And you talk about who's insured, it's a lot of people there. So the most important thing we have to look at, number one, is look at the exclusion to see where coverage is restricted. And in terms of this claim right now, we're talking about the number one declination, the reasonable declination or something like this here is, in fact, it's probably one of the number one reasons why we see declinations across the board. All different types of D&O is because of bodily injury. Bodily injury claim is probably the number one reason. And the reason why it's there is because it is covered under the general liability policy and the umbrella policy. It's not designed for the D&O. So you'll see exclusion in the D&O contract that's absolute when we talk about bodily injury, and will exclude any claim arising out of or attributable to bodily injury.
Okay. Now, Kevin, that's even though if they allege a wrongful act against the board for failure to have a maintenance and inspection plan, correct?
Exactly. Doesn't matter there. It is a bodily injury. So whenever there's an issue involving bodily injury, sickness, death, disease, these are all excluded in the D&O contract, even though they claim for a wrongful act as defined in the policy.
Absolutely. Okay. And what's another exclusion that you see, Kevin?
All right, the next one is, and this is another one, probably even more important than the bodily injury, is property damage. See, we talk about property damage is excluded in there, again, for the same reason why it's covered under general liability. However, when we talk about property damage for a community association, the board's responsibility is to manage property. So whenever you see things like failure to maintain a common area or faulty equipment damage, any of those things, it's excluded under the D&O. Even though the board responsibility is to manage their property, anything that alleges property damage is excluded under the D&O.
Okay.
So in a situation we're talking about, okay, let's say the lawsuit alleged failure to have a maintenance inspection plan, which led to destruction of the swing set. Even though nobody was hurt, the claim still could be denied because it was damage to the swing set. The property damage was the reason why the lawsuit was there. So again, what we're talking about here is bodily injury and property damage. Those are the two main exclusions under the D&O policy that you will get a denial for right off the bat. Now, here's a third one that's kind of interesting that we see once in a while, but I once wanted to bring it up, and that is dishonesty, fraud, and willful violation of law. These claims are like deliberate, fraudulent, dishonest acts. And what we see is that boards of directors, they always get, the unit owners who live there always believe that they're self-dealing, they're doing fraudulent things, the boards are dishonest, the management company is dishonest. So you see lawsuits where you're talking about dishonesty, fraud, willful violation. But the one thing that does happen is that there should be a defense cost until they're found guilty. So when you see things like dishonesty and fraud and willful violation and deliberate action, like here, they refused to spend $150. They made a decision not to do it. It wasn't an accident. They just decided not to do it. So, people come back and said, well, it was fraudulent, dishonest. Again, we don't determine if it's fraudulent, dishonest. The court's at the final adjudication determines that.
Okay. Great. And now, Kevin, can you explain what type of a policy, explain the details of a D&O policy and how that affects claims?
Okay. The D&O policy is a claims made and reported policy. Okay. And that's the important thing that you got to remember, that it is a claims made and reported policy. Now, let's talk about what the insured's duties in the event of a claim. Okay? The insured must give written notice of a claim, including all facts related to this wrongful act. no later than 60 days after the expiration date of the policy, and if purchased, the extended reporting period. So when there's a claim under the D&O policy, the claim must be reported as quickly as possible. In fact, I would say right now it's probably one of the top reasons why we see claims are denied because there's one provision here. You see, the problem is when we talk about community association, board of directors, and the property managers, because they get involved in here, is that they really don't understand what a claim is. And so when it comes in, they just don't handle it properly. They hold on to it thinking it'll go away or just resolve itself. Eventually, the lawsuit comes in and it's denied because it was reported outside the policy period, including the extended reporting period.
Okay. Can you give us an example, Kevin?
Sure. All right, let's say that on May 1st, the board receives this demand letter from a concerned homeowner that the swing set was not safe and demand that the board purchase a manufacturer's warranty. Now, the policy itself was canceled June 1st. So June 1st, policy canceled. May 1st, they made a demand. Now, in November, the homeowner sues the board because they were not in compliance with the CC&Rs, not purchased a warranty, and the swing broke. So coverage could be denied because the claim was reported after the policy was canceled June 1st and after any extended reporting period that was purchased. Now, they also can deny based on the property damage, but right now they can come right out the gate and says, no, policy was canceled June 1st. You had a significant time to get the ERP. Policy is canceled.
Okay. And now this is complicated stuff that we're going over, Kevin. You know, this is rather complicated. So if anybody has any questions, feel free to type your questions into the question box or email them to me at sbranson@kdins.com. And I'm happy to answer your questions after the webinar or at the end.
Yeah. So when we talk about the claims made and reported, understand that it involves claims that reported after the policy no longer is in effect.
Okay.
After the policy no longer in effect. Now, when we talk about things like prior acts coverage, which is the next section, which is number 3, we talk about prior acts coverage, retroactive date, pending and prior litigation date, and continuity of coverage. Those are different. We're talking about something different there. It's not after the policy no longer in effect. This is before coverage is in effect. Okay. So when we talk about these things, it's important to understand that when prior acts are excluded, coverage for any claims for wrongful act prior to exception date is excluded. Okay.
Okay.
So let me give you an example. Okay. So we said before the board canceled the D&O effective June 1st. And if you don't have prior acts coverage, if prior acts are all excluded, then any wrongful act involved in any claim with the violation CC&R, anything with the swing is excluded. So now you have a new policy effective June 1st, and now in November, when that claim comes in, no coverage at all. Doesn't matter how they lay it out because you exclude all prior acts. That's if you exclude prior acts. Now,
okay.
The retroactive date is what is used to exclude prior acts. So the date is usually listed on the policy declarations page. So if you see a retroactive date on the policy, that means you're looking at something that will exclude all prior acts. So example above, if you have a June 1st retroactive date, then no coverage would apply for any wrongful act prior to that date.
Okay.
Now, even if you have a full prior acts coverage, prior knowledge of any wrongful act still be excluded. So we talk about things like pending and prior litigation, continuity of coverage is the way that coverage is excluded in the policy. Okay? So when talking about things like pending and prior litigation, continuity of coverage, the goal is to exclude all claims involving any fact, circumstance, situation, event, or act which was the subject of any prior notice of a claim, or the insured should reasonably have knowledge of that claim. Okay?
Okay.
All right. Also, one more thing. Hopefully it's not too complicated. Also exclude any fact, circumstances, situation, event, or act in any civil, criminal, administrative, regulatory proceeding that's pending or completed is also excluded. Again, our goal here is to exclude all known acts. So when we talk about pending and prior litigation, continuity, retroactive date, prior acts, it is excluding known acts and certain acts.
Okay. And Kevin, that leads us to the next section, which we're going to talk about applications. And it's really important to accurately fill out an application. If you don't put everything down on the application, that could be a problem, right, Kevin?
Yeah, because on the application is the method we use, and most of the DO carriers use to find out, to document any facts, circumstances, situation, event, or act that may give rise to a claim. If answered incorrectly, then coverage may be an issue. Okay?
Mm-hmm.
And we talk about several key questions on the application. On our app, it'll say, has there been any legal action taken by you on behalf of your association against any member or third party? Or are there any pending claims, counterclaims, or litigation against any person or entity proposed for this insurance? Those are the questions there that we want to make sure that they answer correctly so that you have the coverage that you need. Now, if any time there's any act, circumstances, or event that may give rise to a claim and you're moving from one carrier to another, just make sure you disclose it to the previous carrier. You got to make sure that is most important, because if you don't put it on their application and it comes up later, then all of a sudden you're looking at a potential declination.
Mm-hmm, absolutely. And Kevin, the employment section is really important as well, right? The number of employees, and that has to be done correctly. That could be a big
yes. Mm-hmm. It's interesting because in the community association, most of them don't have employees, and so most of the time you put 0 on there. But all of a sudden, every once in a while, we get an application that says 0, and then all of a sudden we see an EPLI, employment practices liability claim, and that employment practices liability claim ends up costing $1,000, even though you look at the application said 0 when it came to reporting any type of claim. Mm-hmm. So make sure you, again, the key here is to complete the D&O application the best way with the best knowledge, as accurate as possible, because we don't want to see a declination because the application was not completed properly.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. It's very important. Very important. And we just went over another complicated section. So again, if anybody has any questions, please type it in the question box or send me an email to sbranson@kdins.com. And again, you can listen to it again on our website, which is kdisonline.com. And then Kevin, the proper.
We did a couple questions here, but I tell you what, we'll finish this last part, then we got a couple questions we can answer.
Okay.
All right, good. Okay. All right, so number 5, this is it. This is probably the most important reason why I see declinations from some of our competitors and some from carriers that really don't understand community associations. The things we're going to talk about now should be standard, okay, in the D&O, and you got to make sure that there are coverage for these really different kind of things. So the first one we're talking about is non-monetary damage claims, okay? When we talk about non-monetary, in fact, I think there's a question about is an email from a unit owner considered a demand when no monetary demand is indicated? Okay, so here's what we're talking about right now when we talk about non-monetary damage claims. We talk about claims based on the right to use vertical blinds versus horizontal blinds, or have a pet, or have a comfort pet, or parking. Those are all, when you're talking about these kind of claims, these are all emotionally based claims and are non-monetary in nature. You got to make sure your definition of claim includes monetary and non-monetary losses. Mm-hmm. So that's number 1. The second one is noise. Okay, if you look at the definition of noise and pollutant, because all your liability policies exclude pollution except for pollution coverage.
Sure.
So when you look at the definition, you got to make sure the word noise is not a pollutant, because sometimes you end up finding out later on that when an upstairs neighbor is making too much noise, or the elevator is making too much noise, or the air conditioning makes too much noise, that they come back after you and say, well, guess what? Look at the definition of pollutant. Noise is in there, so we do not pick up that kind of coverage. Mm-hmm. Okay. The next one we have is non-employment discrimination. Okay, and these involve things like the Fair Housing Act and American Disabilities Act. And we talk about things like just discrimination because you mistreated me. You selectively or arbitrarily enforcing the documents against me because I'm a protected class, not the person down the street. And that's really, really important coverage. You got to make sure you pick up non-employment discrimination. You also have to pick up employment discrimination, because employment discrimination can also be pretty big, especially if you have employees. We had a situation where there was a board election. The new board came in and terminated the doorman who's been there for 30 years. As a result, the doorman came in, filed a discrimination complaint against the board president and the board, alleging or accusing the board of age discrimination. So you got to have employment discrimination, non-employment discrimination. Another one is insured versus insured. Most of the times you can't sue yourself, so it's automatically excluded. But you got to make sure, because we start to see conflict between old boards and new boards. Our president against the treasurer, board members suing each other over some kind of disagreement. You know, and one area will say it is fair to fund the reserve because they believe that past board should have done it, or the current board should reserve properly. So you got to make sure the insured versus insured is not there. And then finally, we have something called the breach of contract. You know, the breach of contract, you know, it's excluded, again, under most D&O policy. You got to make sure that if there's a breach of contract, it's against a cable operator or an elevator repair person or roofer or painter contractor. You enter into contracts, you terminate contracts, they will sue. And then what we do is provide defense costs under there. No judgment, because we just don't do that. But you got to make sure you get some defense costs in there. So those are the coverages you got to make sure you have that we see denied from some of our competitors because they don't have these coverages.
Okay, those are very important areas. Again, and Kevin, we do have another question that's come in from Daniel Davis. Thank you, Daniel, for sending in your question. I wonder if he's related to you, Kevin. Daniel Davis.
Well, if you ask a smart question, he probably is.
It's your cousin, I bet. Does submitting a notice of incident that has not risen to a claim but may become a future claim cause an increase in D&O premium or cause the D&O policy to be non-renewed?
Okay, I would say don't even worry about it. If you have something that may give rise to a claim, submit the claim. Do not worry about if the rate's going to go up, not going to go up, because what happens is, because it's a claims made and reported policy, you end up having later on down the line when you want that claim to be covered, is not covered. So that is the reason why you're not going to worry about what's going to happen next year or 5 years from now or at all.
So just submit it.
Submit the claim.
Submit it. When in doubt, submit. Okay, great. If anybody else has any other questions, feel free to email them to me to my email address, which is sbranson@kdins.com. And if you'd like a copy of the PowerPoint presentation that we showed you today, I can also email you that. Just let me know if you want it. And the recording will be on our website. I'll give that to you one more time. It's kdisonline.com. And if you think of any other questions, shoot me an email. Thank you, Kevin, and thank you, everybody, for joining us today. We had a great webinar, and please join us in April, on April 26th, as we do a cyber update for community associations. Have a great afternoon, everybody. Take care.
Thanks a lot.
Thank you.